everybody, my name is Analyticalplum and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm deciding to do something not necessarily new, but new for me. As you can see, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of one of my favourite books of all time, which is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And I'm going to do this just because I can. No, but I really enjoy watching these types of videos. I'm inspired to do this off, I think her name is Carrie Cam Reads, although she's not the first person to do this, but she's one of the only people that I've physically watched do this. But in terms of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I've decided to do this book because the TV show is going to be coming out soon. So I'm doing this for all the people who don't have the book and want to know the plot beforehand, or for people who have already read the book and don't feel like rereading it and would just like a refresher, because I definitely like rereading things, especially if I know a TV counterpart is going to be coming out. I might be doing one for Percy Jackson as well, because that's coming out soon, so let me know if that's something you'd be interested in and I will do it. But I really enjoyed preparing this video, so we'll get straight into it. So these are the images to represent the important characters, and I started off quite sensible, as you can see, by Pippa, Ravi and Sal. But as I tried to find more character pictures, there wasn't really many, to be honest, so I kind of struggled, and then I started off with Regina and it kind of just went downhill, and then they just ended up being completely Mimi, and I'm not I'm not sad about that, because Mimi dogs are my absolute favourite thing, so that's why that's there now. But but anyway, I've got my little touchy, so I'll point to each character. In terms of these characters, I only included the ones who I felt were important, or who kept coming back up, or who had a main point to the plot, like getting it going. So that's why all these people are here. Well, people and dogs now. So the main point of this, or not the main point, the beginning of this book sets up that there is a closed case, which is all centered around Andy and Sal. And what happened was, there was a tragic event 5 years ago. Andy has gone missing and everyone believed that Sal did it. So everyone hates Sal. Sal, woo. No one likes him. Everyone loves Andy. Andy's amazing. And that's how it's set up at the beginning. So everyone believes that Sal murdered Andy. So that's the whole thing at the beginning. And then it starts off in the book with Pippa. She's our main character. She has a EPQ project, and if you don't know what that is an extended project qualification, and what you do is just pick your own projects and do your own research and present it. Pippa decided to do her research project on the cold case. It was a bit iffy. They kind of didn't want to let her do it because it's so sensitive and it's still quite fresh in people's minds, even though it's 5 years ago. So they let her do it, but as long as she doesn't talk to, she doesn't overstep moral grounds, and she doesn't talk to members of the family that were involved in the case. And her whole proposal for her EPQ was how social media can become invaluable players in police investigations. And so that's how we start off. And this is all before the official chapter 1, so it's quite a bit. So then Pip goes to Sal's house and she knocks on the door. We get some insight about the house beforehand, about how everyone treats it like a ghost house, like a haunted house, because that's where Sal lives. Everyone avoids it and treats it like it's empty and abandoned, like people literally dare people to go up and knock on it and run away, like it's but there are still people living in the house, which is Sal's family, which is where we meet Ravi for the first time. And Ravi is Sal's brother. He opens the door for Pip, and Pip is basically introducing herself. She's quite awkward, she's quite cute, quirky, you know. And Sal is, I think he's around 20, whereas Pip is like 17ish. So that's how they're dynamic is. And Pip starts blurting out some random quotes because she's nervous, but eventually she tells him that she wants to do her project on the case and that she doesn't believe that Sal did it and she is going to prove it. And that is the end of the, I'm going to say pre-chapter. That's basically what it is. So throughout this book we get, it's very cool actually, because we get drawings and we get production logs that increase like as you go throughout the book, which is sort of what you do in EPQ, because you've got to mark down your diary of what you do and what you've learned, and just to show your progress and your research. In Pippa's first production log she includes details just that we need knowing going forth on Andy's investigation. Oh, by the way, everything I mention, even if it sounds unimportant, it's gonna be very important. So I'm gonna mention things here and there that you're gonna need to remember. She includes articles of the disappearance of Andy. She was said to have last been seen in her car with her phone, but she didn't take any clothes of her, so it wasn't like she just upped and left and disappeared. And the police were coming out saying that it was apparently very out of character for her. We got a witness statement from Becca, which is Andy's younger sister, saying that she last saw Andy at 10:40, that she was supposed to be picking up her parents from like this mule thing at around 12:45. The police placed Andy's disappearance between 10:40, when Becca last saw her, to 12:45, and that's 10:40 at night to 12:45 in the morning. After that we explore Pip's home life and we meet Victor, which is Pip's stepdad, but she calls him dad and thinks of him as her dad, and Joshua, who is also her half brother but calls him brother, all that jazz, and Barney, which is their golden retriever dog. So cute, they're such a lovely family. And then we learned that Pip's dad did in fact die in a car accident when she was 12 months old. That's not really relevant, but I just thought to include that because why not? And then we get another production log from Pip where it says that Sal was revealed to be Andy's boyfriend at the time of her disappearance. Police did confirm Sal's alibi with multiple people during this case, which he was with his 4 best friends. Now one of them, Millie, isn't really relevant, so like she's gone. She's disappeared from out of the area. Oh, neither is the other one. So there was 4 friends with him, but only 2 of them are really important. So the other 2 are Max, that's one of his friends he was hanging out with, and also Naomi. He was hanging out with these 2 and 2 others who are irrelevant. He was said to be hanging out with these people around the time of Andy's disappearance, and he said he was at Max's house. Ooh. This is really hard to get used to. But he was at Max's house at around until 12:15-ish, like at night. So if that was confirmed, he wouldn't have been able to like hurt Andy. And he was confirmed by Sal's dad to have arrived back at 12:50 a.m. So if that's true, he definitely couldn't have done it. And police did confirm this at first. But the sneaky thing is, his mates, right, these and then the 2 other people, they were quite sneaky, right, because they said to police afterwards, like a couple of days later after Sal gave his alibi, and said that he made them lie to support him, and that he actually left at 10:40 and not 12:15. Not good at all. Not good for Sal. Not looking good. And then a bit of a trigger warning. There's going to be trigger warnings throughout this book because it is quite dark and there are moments where the descriptions are quite a lot. Trigger warning for this bit. The next part of the production log includes the fact that they found Sal's body in the end, and he ended up committing suicide, and he died through suffocation of a bag and also an excess of sleeping pills. Alongside this, Sal's dad was said to have received a confession text. We don't really know what it says, but he sent one to his dad, which it basically screams guilty, doesn't it? So if he didn't die, they would have charged him and arrested him of Andy's murder. And this is all because of evidence they found. So they found her blood under his fingernails, and her phone was found on Sal's body, and they also found her car eventually, which had his fingerprints on the steering wheel. But the problem with his prints being on the steering wheel was the fact that there was her blood in the car. It's really not looking good at this point. It was case closed. However, Pip includes the last bit in a production log where it says, "This case may be reopened whenever new evidence or leads develop." So that's good for her. Very good news. And then we also learned that there was never a jury verdict to determine whether Sal was actually guilty or not. So it's quite bad because Sal was never found guilty, but everyone just assumed he was guilty, and it's not good. So moving on, we meet two of Pippa's friends who are right here, Cara and Lauren. For pre-context, this is quite important, plays in a lot. Cara is sisters with Naomi, who was there with Sal the night that Andy disappeared and who later said that he made them lie. They supported his alibi and then later changed their mind and said that he lied. So they're related. So that's how they're connected in a way. So Pip is friends with Cara, who's sisters with Naomi, who's friends with Sal. It gets a bit confusing, but as you go on, you sort of piece it together. So we're told that Cara she's been really close with Pip their whole life. They've been friends for a long time, and that her family is her second family, and that Elliot here, right here, is like a father figure to Pip, like a second father figure behind like her dad Victor and her father who passed away, who she didn't really know. But also on top of that, Mr. Elliot, who is Cara's and Naomi's dad, is their history teacher. So it's all one big circle. It's like one of those small tiny towns, you know, when everyone's like, oh, there's only like 4 people in this town and everyone knows each other. It's like that. It's like that sort of situation. Oh, and just to clarify, Cara is the younger sister of Naomi. So they're sort of older and Pip and her friends are younger. I think it's like 2 years. Pip here decides to make a phone call to Stanley, who is a journalist, and she decides to do this because he was the one who posted a bunch of news articles calling Sal like a monster, just being really harsh, being a bit of a douche, and like there was no allegedly, it was just blanket harsh statements. And she decides to call him, and he reveals that the police believed that Andy was killed and used her car to move her body to another location, and that apparently there was an alleged death threat note in her locker at school, but that wasn't in the news reports or in police statements or anything. So that's big, like shocking, because somebody was threatening her, but we don't know who it was. So Pip goes to Ravi's house again to get his statement and interview him afterwards, and she was asking him basically about his brother, about Sal, and he said stuff like he was in a good mood before he went to Max's house on the night of the everything happened, but also afterwards. So it was quite a happy lad during that time. He explained that Sal had a couple missed calls for when like during the night, but he slept through them all because his phone was on silent, and one of the missed calls that Sal had was from one of Andy's best friends. And when Sal found out that Andy was missing, he appeared devastated to Ravi, and he kept constantly ringing her phone trying to find her. he rang her all day and then all weekend and just constantly trying to look for her, but obviously no luck. And then we get something that's a bit telling of Andy's character, especially with her father. She's got a bit of daddy issues because Ravi says how Sal has told him that Andy and her father have a really strained relationship. He wouldn't put it past Andy to just run away for punishment for something. So that's the type of individual she is. Like, she does things sort of for attention or just because she can or just for manipulation. Then we find out what the confession text is that Ravi no, wrong one, that Sal sent to his dad, and it says, "It was me, I did it, I'm sorry," which is obviously a proper written out confession tape. Who am I, in the 60s? Confession text. And Ravi reveals that he thinks Naomi is in love with Sal, which is another thing that adds dynamic. So just to clear it up, they're sisters, that's their dad and history teacher. She might be in love with Sal, who is going out with Andy, and they're friends. Yeah, are you with me on the same page? So it is also revealed during this that Pippa was actually quite close with Sal, and they were quite friendly and acquaintances. They'd make pancakes together because Sal would be round Naomi's house at the same time that Pippa would be round there with Cara, so they went by in passing and they were quite nice and friendly, so she knew him beforehand, like before everything happened. So then after this, Pip decides to do a bit of research and she starts watching interview videos of like just the news interviews, especially with Andy's family, and she finds that Andy's father is very, very controlling and toxic, especially towards Becca and her mother. So that's another suspicious figure to add to the list at this point. It just keeps growing, and I tell you, throughout this it just gets longer and longer and longer. Like, honestly, in the pages there's a literal list that gets longer, it gets bolded, it gets italiced. Is it italics? The twisty words. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. So next, Pip goes to interview Naomi, and Naomi mentions how Sal was actually having a disagreement with Andy at the time of her disappearance, and that he didn't really want to talk to her for a while. And we find out that little Naomi, who has a crush on Sal, shockingly didn't like Andy. She goes on to talk about their relationship and say that Andy and Sal were always fighting and bickering, but it was always the silliest of things, and that Andy would just sort of blow up over anything and then Sal would just take it. From her eyes it seemed a bit like a horrible relationship. And then Naomi starts talking about the night that she last saw Sal, when they were both hanging out at Max's house before everything happened, and the last thing she saw of Sal of that night was that he wasn't feeling it anymore, like the party they were having, and decided to go and have an early night. This is important. Cara, she interrupts the interview and starts looking for jammy Dodgers, and she can't find them. She saw her dad unpack them, so she's like, what the hell, where are my jammy Dodgers? And then we just skim past it and move on back with the interview. But then Naomi gets too upset, can't really continue, so then we move on. And Pip goes to interview our Maxi boy right here. I love Boris Johnson. I am obsessed with the fact I chose Boris Johnson. It was meant to be, I think. Max's statement really contrasts Naomi's. Like, there's a lot of discrepancies between them. So when Naomi said that Sal spoke quite a bit of Andy, saying they were disagreeing and that he didn't want to talk to her and that he left, saying he wasn't feeling it. Well, Maxi boy right here said that he didn't even talk about Andy at all that night, and he said that Sal actually slipped out without a word. A bit different, so don't know what's going on there. And then we find out, like, during this period that Mrs. Naomi here went upstairs and she was a bit MIA. So we don't really know what's going on there. Naomi didn't really tell us anything. That's a bit of another puzzle that we don't know. Next, our little investigator Pip decides to interview Elliot, and he claims that Sal, he found him very intelligent. He had a place at Oxford University before everything happened, and that he helped him like with his statements and interviews, and he thought he was a really bright person. We learn that Elliot didn't go into work the day that Sal died because he had a sickness bug, so we didn't really see him then. He reacted a bit funny when he was asked if he knew much about Andy, which is a bit weird. So then after the interview, Pip was quite confused on how Elliot could praise Sal so much for being so intelligent, but then there was obvious traces of evidence linking Sal to Andy. So if he was so intelligent, then how was it so obvious that he murdered Andy, you know? Like the blood, the phone, just so many things just didn't add up, you know? If you were really smart, you wouldn't make a murder very obvious. So at this point, both Ravi and Pip decide to team up together because Ravi's quite getting into it and he agrees with Pip that Sal didn't do it, and they're going to try and work together to prove that Sal didn't do it. So they've turned this from an EBQ research project into a full-on blown investigation, as much as you can between a teenager and a just newly turned baby adult. And then Ravi gives Pip Sal's phone because he had it. So looking through Sal's phone, they discovered that the 2 missed calls was from Andy and was from Max here, and they see that he sent a message to Andy saying something along the lines of, "I'm not talking to you till you've stopped." So we're not quite sure what that means yet. Probably something suspicious with the way she's going about things. And then when they both looked over that confession text to Sal's dad, they noticed something off about it. Like the grammar just doesn't match. The way that the confession text was written is completely different to how Sal usually texts. Like you can tell that they tried to mimic it, but there were so many things where Sal wouldn't type out the full thing, or like capital letters. Like he would always make sure that certain things are there, whereas the confession text didn't have that. So they thought that was a bit weird and agreed that probably wasn't him. And they found a number plate of a car. Well, they assume it is written in his notes, and it says R009KKJ. So, oh, it's thickening, guys. So another interview coming up, which is with Emma, which is Andy's one of 2 best friends. They're kind of not important, but they kind of are. I ran out of ideas, honestly, but they're not really that important. And she tells us that Andy and Sal were bickering a lot. Andy was actually supposed to stay home the night she went missing. Another trigger warning, and she was meant to stay home because her sister Becca had just been hospitalised for self-harming, and she'd just come out of the hospital, and her parents wanted Andy to stay there to look after Becca. She obviously weren't, and she was gone, so lovely sister. Emma tells us a bit more about Andy as a person, like her personality, and she tells us that being friends with Andy was very self-destructive, and that Andy was quite a toxic person, just horrible. Like if you'd picture Alison De Laurentiis from Pretty Little Liars, that was Andy to a T. Like I was gonna have a picture of Alison, I don't know why I didn't, I just forgot. And my brain weren't working when I was trying to pick the pictures. But she found the relationship very, very toxic. And she said that Andy would use your insecurities against you. So not a lovely person at all. So then Pip decides to interview the other best friend of Andy, and her name is Chloe, and she tells us that Andy used to love pitting Emma and Chloe against each other, like making them compete in a way, and she absolutely loved keeping secrets and bragging about the fact that she had secrets. What she would do is like she would tell one of her friends that she'd have this secret but wouldn't tell the other, so it was sort of like picking and choosing and like putting them against each other and just making it all weird. She informs Pip that Andy was actually getting a big supply of money from somewhere, but she didn't tell anybody who or where she was getting it from. But she was splashing this money like crazy and spending it on friends. And well, I think in the book it said something like she got one of them a pair of jeans, and then after a while she'll say it looks ugly on you, like it's best if you give it to the other best friend, like things like that, you know. And then we find out that Andy, dear Andy, was not a virgin when she went missing, but she didn't have an intimate relationship with Sal. And this may not seem important, but it is a bit important when we get to the end of the book. That's why I included it. So then the interview abruptly stops because Chloe was not having it when she started asking questions about Andy's dad. So that's over. But our dear Pip, right, decides to catfish Emma. She decides to catfish her. Like if you, it's weird. It's a bit weird. Like she's gone a bit far. I'd say she's passionate. She's definitely gonna get the A-star. So she messages Emma, pretending that she's Chloe, the other best friend, to be like, "Oh hey girl, this random girl was randomly popping up to me asking about Andy. Did she do it to you?" And like starting off like that. Emma lets loose that she never mentioned about Andy's secret older guy. She tells us, who is Chloe, so we're Chloe technically now, that Andy said that she could ruin this secret older guy if she was to tell anyone about him. And then it is also revealed at this point that Andy's dad was actually cheating on their mum, and that's why they had that strained relationship, because of his infidelity. And Annie knew about it. Not good there. Everyone's just great. Everyone's having a grand time. So at this point, Pip, Cara and Lauren and a few other mates decide to go camping. And when they're out camping, Pip is like, she's spotted someone spying on them in the woods. Creepy, right? Imagine going camping and someone, you just feel someone's watching you. I mean, I feel that in the bathroom when I'm trying to wash my face or I'm having a shower. Like, I cannot even imagine if someone was watching me in the woods. I wouldn't be able to stay there. I'd go straight away. So she tells her group of friends, hey guys, somebody's there, like creeping on us, being weird. And they have no chill, her mates. One of them, Connor, decides to start, you know, running after him and obviously scaring the person away. So then Pip goes after him and it's all a big chase. Didn't find him, obviously. Who would have thought? But they all go back to the camping site, and when they're all tucking in, get ready to sleep, Pip finds a note in her sleeping bag, and it's like a typewritten note. The note says, "Stop digging, Pippa." So it's starting to get a bit real. People know that she's doing this. Like, I think the whole town knows that she's doing this. People think it's weird. But yeah, she got a threatening note to stop. But is she? No, otherwise it would end there. So Pip then has a second interview with Emma. Andy's one of her best friends. She's very bold, Pip. I love her, but she asks Emma about this secret older guy, and obviously Emma's like, "What? Older guy? What are you on about?" But she does in fact confirm that there was a secret older guy, and she also says how Andy didn't like Elliot Ward, and she said she called him an asshole for some reason, but she didn't really know why. There's a bit of tension between these two as well. She's got beef with everybody, I swear to God. So then Pip starts to get suspicious of Elliot and think that he is the secret older guy. So then Pip goes to ask Elliot about these comments and being like, what the hell have you done to like warrant this comment? And he basically explains that he found out that Andy was bullying another student in her year, and he called her father to basically explain everything, and her dad said that he would sort it out, and like basically telling her off for her behaviour. And so obviously she didn't like that. But when he called her dad about her behaviour, this was the Monday before Andy went missing, so this was just before she went missing. And to this, Elliot recommended her punishment be restricted internet access. So then after this, we had another interview with Naomi, and she tells us that Andy was bullying a student named Natalia da Silva, our lovely little puppy right here. What she thought the bullying was about was because Nat was like a carbon copy of Andy, and felt like Andy was quite threatened by Nat, that they were both gorgeous, they were both blonde, but she felt that Andy needed to be the queen of everything. Like Alison, this is what it is. She's Alison De Laurentiis, Andy is. So she didn't treat her nice because she thought that she was like competition. So what Andy did was that she catfished. There's a lot of catfishing. What's going on? But she catfished Nat and convinced her to, like, as her crush, and convinced her to send a topless video of herself to who she thought was a crush, which was actually Andy. So Andy leaked this video and then later used it to slut shame Nat. She then goes on to tell us that after Nat got the lead role in one of the school plays, Andy was not happy with that, and she actually blackmailed her into dropping out. It's juicy what she blackmailed her with. So essentially, Andy allegedly slept with Daniel Da Silva, and if you couldn't tell by the names, Daniel is Nat's brother, and Daniel was a janitor at the time, like during this time period at their school, and she claims that she slept with him. And obviously that's not very good because he's older. She was a minor, so I think he was about 20ish, and Andy is 15 at this point, so obviously he could be arrested for statutory rape. So not good. She drops out, Andy gets the part. Hooray for Andy. We find out that at the moment in present day, Daniel is now a police officer, hence the police doggy. I thought this was so cute. So after this, just on a walkout, Pip bumps into Becca. She's doing a horrific job staying away from the family members, isn't she? She's like diving head first. I don't know how she didn't get suspended, you know. After all this, she never got suspended. Can you believe that? But she bumps into Becca, who tells us that she's like kinda dating Stanley, you know, the journalist from before who was nasty about Sal, and tells us that she doesn't want her mum involved in Pip's research or herself, which is like understandable, you know. I mean, it's her sister, so there. Pip goes on to interview Becca's best friend, Jess. Now, Jess isn't really relevant in this, but she tells us about how their dad was extremely toxic to the whole family, making constant nasty jokes between them, like calling them ugly, and pinning the sisters against each other in a competition. So doesn't that sound familiar? That's exactly what Andy does to her best friends. So she copies what her dad does to her and her sister and puts it out on her friends. Apple don't fall far from the tree. She says that during this time, her and Becca actually had a falling out because they attended this has been important. They attended what's called a calamity party, which was one of the big things during the times. A lot of parties, and it's just basically a fancy name for a student party that they throw in like one of their houses. You know, like in typical American like TV shows and books and that. It's one of those. And that she says she wasn't happy because Becca suddenly disappeared. Then the next morning when she spoke to Becca, Becca asked for help in getting the morning after pill, and the last thing Jess said was that at the calamity party she saw Andy, our little minx, getting close to Max being Sal's friend, and they were close and whispering and like, ooh. Another link. It's all just all over the place at this point. So then obviously Pip goes to Max to be like, what are you doing snuggling up to your best mate's girl, you know? And he adamantly denies being close with Andy at that party. During this whole interview, he doesn't want Pip there because he took Pip to his room because his mum was there. He didn't want him there, but he kept glancing, like looking over to his posters, and Pip was like finding it really strange. So she starts pacing, like trying to make it not obvious that she was going over there. And then she pounces and starts going through all of his things. You know what? Pip does quite a lot of bad things in this, but it's fine. It's Pip, you know, we'll let her off. But she starts like clawing through where he's looking at and ends up finding a topless picture of Andy. He's not looking good at all, is he? He's just digging it deeper and deeper. So obviously she's like, dude, what the hell? Why you got a topless pic of Andy? And then he's like sweating buckets, you know. He claims that he found it on the floor at school and that he wasn't sleeping with Andy, but he was actually buying drugs from Andy. There's just one thing on top of the other, isn't it? He says how Andy was actually working with a drug dealer from out of town and like she was his source in getting in with the young folk. So then Pip convinces her friends like Cara and Lauren, Connor and all that to go with her to one of these calamity parties because they're still happening during this time. So they decide to go to just to see if anybody was dealing, because she dealt like mainly her drugs at the calamity parties, which is why they were like snuggling, like her and Max were snuggling and like getting close and that because she was given the drugs. So Pip goes to see if somebody is still dealing at these calamity parties, but she spots a guy going up to have a smoke. So she's like, using her noggin, and she goes out to the smoking area. And she bumps into another student at her school, asks him for some Mary Jane, you know, all that jazz. And he has some, gives her some, and she pretends to smoke it, as you do. So she's not that bad yet, she's still a good girl. The problem is, though, he refuses to give up who his dealer is. Like, we get a name, and that name is Mr. Howie here. That is our drug dealer. So, no number. What can we do? Oh, look, the blunt's suddenly gone flying. So he goes to get the blunt, but it was quite good. So Pip's all like, oh, you can have my number. She has his phone, like the student's phone, tends to put her number in it, but actually scrolls through his contact list and looks for Howie's name and gets his number, and she takes a picture with her phone of Howie's number. This is all during the time when he's trying to look for the blunt on the floor. But I suppose if it's a grassy area, you wouldn't be able to find it, but that's quite a bit of time actually. We'll pretend it's really grassy, right? So while he's scavenging around, she takes a picture of the Howie's number and walks away after he tries to assault her. Nasty fella. But she gets away. She arranges a fake meeting with Mr. Howie just so she can scope out what he looks like and like what his meeting looks like and just get a gist of what he does. But during these meetings that she's watching, Becca's on and off fling whatever. Mr. Stanley, the journalist, goes up to Howie and he gives Howie a thick envelope, which we assume is just full of cash, and they have a bit of a threatening, tense conversation. Another mystery on top of it all. Pip ends up following Howie after these deals, and Howie heads home, so she follows him the whole way on foot. Like they're both on foot. And he goes into his house. Nothing's suspicious about it first, apart from Pip notices that the road he lives on is the road they found Andy's abandoned car. And not only that, Pip finds out that Howie's car, his number plate is the same number plate as what Sal has in his contact list. Pip was like, Ravi, you need to get over here and like pulls him over just so that they can both see the car, like confirm it, and they are in fact definitely a match. So they start theorizing, you know, like maybe Sal was trying to protect Andy from the police, and that's why his statement was a bit off. So maybe he was just protecting her from the police because of her drug dealings, and maybe that's what they were arguing about, nitpicking, because Sal despises drugs, that we find out from Ravi. He hates drugs, and so the fact that his girlfriend is doing it didn't sit well with him. That's probably what they were arguing about, and that's probably what he was like, I want you to stop, I won't talk to you until you stop. That's probably what he was talking about. The confidence on these guys, right? Pip and Ravi, they go knock on Harry's door. They're like, hello, Mr. Drug Dealer, I'm asking you questions about Andy. And they blackmail him to answer questions because Pip, while she was scoping out, took pictures of him selling to a student. Obviously, that's not good for him if that gets out. So during this confrontation, we find out that Andy actually had a secret burner phone to do all of her drug deals on, and like all of her connections and communications. Andy was selling a variety of drugs, especially to a posh kid. To this posh kid, she was selling roofies. You know, that nasty drug. And guess who she was selling roofies to? Mr. Boris Johnson. Mr. Max Hastings. Nasty. So after this, Pip gets another threatening message. Obviously nothing. All fine. Keep going on. It gets even more bold between Pip and Ravi. They decide to break into Andy's house to look for her burner phone. Bizarre. So they want to look in her bedroom for this burner phone. They look like in her wardrobe and around, and they didn't find anything at all. And the only thing they found of use was Andy's planner, like her school planner. So they took pictures of that and skedoodled out of there, especially because Becca came home at one point, so they were like, no, we gotta go. In Andy's planner, there was a lot of like coded phrases and events, you could say, and Pip manages to decipher like a few of them. So she managed to match the code to location, so like CP's car park and like bits like that, but there are a few that she couldn't figure out. It's slightly a bit of a dead end. We know that these are the places and the times that Andy was doing her dealings for the drugs. And also in her planner, she finds a scribbled out phone number. So we get the first half of the phone number, but we never get the end. Like, it's gone, and there's quite a few possibilities of what this phone number could be. For one place in particular, IV was the code name. Ravi sends a list of all possible locations with IV and like surrounding areas, and so Pip goes through each of them and like goes on Google review, and one location in particular, the IV Hotel I think is called, the reviews on that, like the area match Andy's topless picture. Like the area was the same as on the Google reviews. Pip and Ravi then go to this hotel and they question the owner, basically being like, do you keep diaries of who enters and who goes, and if they recognize Andy because they had a picture? And she says about how they don't really keep copies. She recognizes Andy, so it's a bit of a dead end, especially because she seemed to have dementia, I think it was. So they were unsure if they actually knew that Andy was there, and obviously they couldn't get the accounts on if she was there or not. So bit of a dead end. But on the drive home, Miss Little Investigator manages to spot Max shouting like violently at Howie. When Max was all like, oh yeah, I don't really know Howie, it's just someone Andy works with. He lied. He did know Howie. Like, they were meeting up. Pip starts emailing a few of the old Calamity Party members just to ask if they know anything about spiking during these parties, and a few of them got back to her. So one person revealed that Natalie thought that she got spiked at one of these parties. Another person said that her friend was spiked and she reported it to a young Mount policeman, but nothing came of it at all. So Pip searches the police force staff at this time, and who do you know was the only young Mount police officer during this time? It's only Bleaton Daniel. So Pip, with the help of Kara, log into Kara's sister's, like Naomi's Facebook account, so she can look on Facebook at Max's second account that he has. So he has like his generic Facebook account, but it has nothing really on it like that. That's mainly safekeeping for media record, or if like anyone wanted to search him up, or if he wanted a job and that. But he had a secret second account. I think it was like Mango Tits or something like that. So obviously, because he's friends with Naomi, Naomi would have access to all of his pictures and everything. So they log into her account, and Pip's able to go through his account and all of his pictures. All of Sal's mates have posted pictures on the night that Andy went missing, and she finds it really coincidental that they all seem to post it at the exact same time, even though they were like really random pictures, like people just looking away or looking down at their phone, like nothing even really good, but they're all oddly at the same time. There was one picture that had all four of them in it at 12ish, but the picture was so far away that it couldn't have been a selfie. If all four of them were there and somebody was taking the picture, then somebody else would have had to have been there. Now they're all claiming that they lied and that Sal wasn't there at that point. Then who was taking the picture of them? So then Pip starts editing and like photoshopping this specific picture of them from far away, and she finds that Naomi had her phone out in this picture, and in this picture it says 12:09 on her phone. With the sharpened effect of the picture, she can see Sal's shirt in the reflection of the window opposite them. So Sal is definitely there at 12:09. So why did they lie saying that Sal wasn't there when he was in fact there? So then they know at this point that Sal's friends are all lying for some reason. Pip and Ravi decide to try and reenact Sal's alleged like murder route from when the police spotted Andy going past a camera at 10:40 to where the houses are, so Max's house, Sal's house, Andy's house, and like trying to pinpoint like where most likely was that he would dump Andy's body. They went through all the time, and they were trying to go through with what was most likely, you know, like pretending to dig a hole in the forest. What they were trying to test to see if Sal could do all of this within the time frame. They started at 12:15, which was the time that he left, all the way up to 12:50, which is when his dad said he came back home. And when they did all of that and managed to go back to Ravi's house, they found that it was way past the time. So there was no possible way that Sal could have killed Andy and also managed to make it back on time. So it wasn't possible. This proved Sal's innocence and that Sal didn't kill or have anything to do with Andy's disappearance that night. So we go back to Naomi and Kara's house, and Mr. Maxi here, he is at the house. So obviously Pip's a bit fuming, and she's like Tinkerbell, you know, when she gets really angry, and she can't hold her tongue at all. She confronts them both about this picture. Max starts by denying it, but Naomi's just quiet. They then admit that they were actually blackmailed to lying about Sal's alibi. They deleted pictures of Sal during that night to remove any evidence that he was actually there at the party, to prove that he was there at 12:15. The thing that he was blackmailed with was that during New Year's Eve, it was just like the friends, like Sal wasn't involved, but Max, Naomi, Millie and Jake, their other friends, they were involved in a drunk driving accident and they severely injured this man, obviously them being drunk, and they left him there. They just left him on the floor, and they later found out that the man ended up being paralyzed. Obviously someone found out and started blackmailing them into lying about Sal's alibi. It's all a bunch of kerfuffle at the moment. So then this was when Naomi admits that when she went upstairs for a bit, she was actually talking to Sal during that time. She says that she was talking to Sal because Sal actually wanted to break up with Andy. So that's what was happening there. So then when Pip comes back, she finds that somebody's been messing around her room because she knew she left the door closed, but she found it wide open and she found her things has been messed with. When she opens up her laptop to write in a log, update her EBQ, she finds another threatening note. And this one says, you need to stop this, Pippa. It's starting to get a bit more personal. Suspected killer been inside her house at this point now. And then after this, she gets one more warning note. So then Pip goes to Becca's workplace. This is when Becca reveals that Daniel here, Mr. Daniel, was close with Becca's dad and would often come around their house a lot, so he could have known about the burner phone and could have moved it because it wasn't there, and that their dad, Jason, was actually the one who convinced Daniel to become a police officer in the first place. So he was in and out a lot. Daniel's starting to look a bit sus. So then Pip goes up to Daniel at a neighborhood officer meeting and starts questioning him. And Stanley, Becca's on and off boyfriend, kinda, Mr. Journalist, was at the meeting as well, which is a bit random. And during these questions, Daniel was quite evasive. Like, he wasn't really saying answers, but he wasn't saying nothing either, But he did let slip that he knew the Hastings, which is Max and his family. He was the one who filed the report of Max's car, because what they did essentially was, after they hit the man while they were drunk driving, to let them get away with it, what they did was they purposefully crashed into a tree just outside of Max's house, so they can be like, oh, I scratched up the car from crashing into the tree and not from hitting a man. So that was their alibi to go with the car. And so Daniel was the one who filed the report for the Hastings. So they knew each other. So Daniel was looking even worse at this point. And then Daniel's wife appears and says something really creepy about how Pip isn't Daniel's usual type. He's looking a bit ugly. And then when she met with Ravi in the cafe afterwards, she spots Stanley and Daniel having a very intense conversation. They abruptly stop when they see Pip and Ravi. Pip starts to suspect that perhaps Daniel might be the secret older guy because he had access to Andy's house. He was technically an older guy, even though it wasn't like by a massive age gap, so she's starting to turn her sights onto Daniel being a possible suspect. So he's also added onto the list, as well as Naomi and Max. So at this point, Pip goes to take Barney, the little puppy golden retriever, out for a walk, but unfortunately he ended up going missing. No more dog, I'm afraid. She gets another threatening message saying, want to see your dog again. So this suspected killer has Barney. What an a-hole. So at this point, Pip gets further instructions telling her to take her laptop, her USBs, anything that has all of her research on this project, to take it with her at a specific location and destroy it, and that if she destroys it, she'd get Barney back. And so she did. Nothing seems to happen, so she went back home and waited. Unfortunately, Barney ended up found dead in the river. She destroyed all of her research and didn't even get Barney back. Ravi comes over to consolidate Pip to just be there for her, but it breaks out into a one-sided argument because Pip refuses to delve into it more because she doesn't want anyone else to get hurt, especially Ravi. But she doesn't tell Ravi this. really. Ravi doesn't know that all these threatening messages and the fact that Arnie was killed purposefully, he wasn't happy that she promised to prove Sal's innocence, but it's suddenly stopping. So he goes off because he decided that he's going to continue on his own. And obviously, when he asked for proof and all the evidence, she says that she destroyed it and that she got rid of it. It's not something you want to hear, especially after getting really, really close and finding out so many new things. It's very disheartening. He's upset and he leaves. But then he comes back over the next day because he realizes that something's off about Pip. It's just not how she usually acts. And he figures out on his own that Pip was actually being threatened and that the suspected killer murdered Barney. So that's when she confesses and basically confirms his suspicions. He encourages her to continue his investigation, even offers his own laptop because hers is destroyed. But then our smart girlie has emailed all of her work to herself. So every production log, every single bit of art she's created, every single email or script, every interview she emailed to herself. So she has it on her email. She has everything and she didn't destroy anything. Very, very smart cookie. Naomi ends up calling Pip just to send her condolences because everyone's finding out about Barney dying. Because it's an unknown number, she explains that she's using a temporary phone because her phone has broken. But the weird thing is that when Pip later goes back through her contacts and like her messages and everything just to double check everything, she notices that the number that Naomi called her with is definitely an exact match to the one that Andy had scribbled out in her notebook. It's starting to come together now. It's starting to form the puzzle. Later on, it's Halloween. Pip is carving pumpkins with Kara and her sister at their house. Kara again starts trying to find some food that she definitely helped her father unpack just a couple days ago. That's all missing. Naomi tells Pip that she was very lucky that Kara found this old phone with a SIM on it, and luckily it had £18 in credit, as the pay-as-you-go on it. And she explains how Kara found this phone and this SIM at the bottom of, like a bits and bobs drawer. She found it at the bottom of that. Pip's a bit mind blown because Naomi reveals that the SIM that she's been using and the phone number that Andy had in her planner was actually Elliot's all along. The phone number, the SIM is all Elliot's. So why would Andy have Elliot's number in her planner? So a while ago, at the beginning of this, when Pip did her first interview with Naomi, she went onto their printer, like after her first threatening message, and she clicked an option where it would save onto the printer every single thing that got printed, and she looked back through these options and found an untitled document by an Elliot, and she reprints this. Unfortunately, the print reveals Pip's first ever threatening message. So the one that's been threatening her was actually Elliot all along. So throughout all the book, Elliot was actually tutoring 3 times a week. And so with all this information, Pip starts actually questioning it a bit more. He didn't need the money because Kara and Naomi's mother unfortunately passed away. Their mother's family was quite rich, and so they got quite a lot of money through their family and like through her will and inheritance and everything like that. So they don't need money. So why was he tutoring? They tell Pip that this actually all started up 5 years ago. 5 years ago when Annie went missing. So Pip is obviously, understandably, very, very suspicious of Elliot at this point, and she starts suspecting that Elliot has Andy, especially because all this food consistently throughout the book keeps going missing, even though Kara was there when he bought it, and it's all going missing. So obviously he has to be having Andy at his place, especially because he keeps going there 3 times a week with no explanation. So Ravi and Pip connect their phones through the Find My Phones app. Pip one time pretends to like sprain her ankle and gets a lift back home by Elliot and Kara, and she leaves her phone in the car. And so when it was tutoring day, they would use the Find My Friends app through Ravi's phone, and they would stalk basically Elliot. So you'd add stalking, breaking and entering. Is catfishing illegal? I'd assume it is. But they've done so many illegal things. Pip is adamant that Andy is at this place that Elliot's going to for these tutoring sessions. And when he gets to the specific location, Pip believes that it is Kara's old house. And so she asks Kara, like, about the address. Kara basically tells Pip that the house that Elliot keeps going to was, so they bought it before their mum passed and they would rent it out for extra income. But obviously when their mum passed, Elliot struggled to do it on his own, and so he told her that he sold it after their mum died. Now, later on in class the following week, Pip is in one of Elliot's history classes and he mentions something about diaries. So that gets her brain ticking, and so she goes running over to Kara's house, and Naomi is there at the moment, and she asks Naomi if she kept a diary, which she did confirm that she did because of therapy, and so she just wrote out everything. She mentions how she wrote about the hit and run in her diary. If Elliot was a snooping, Elliot would have read about the hit and run in her diary. He would have known about it and obviously threatened them into lying about Sal's location. So everything's it's starting to get there. It's getting juicy now. So Pip, all on her own, very, very bless her, she decides to go to this tutoring session without applying. She goes while Elliot is there, but before she enters the room, she rings the police, basically gives a rundown on what she's found out, what she's done, that they need to get there immediately because Elliot is a very, very bad man and that he's holding somebody hostage in this house. So she knocks on the door and she's like, yo, Elliot, you got to tell me everything. The police are on their way. You have like 5 minutes. So he starts spilling everything. He explains how he was very, very lonely when Kara and Naomi's mum passed away. Andy started showing him a lot of attention during this time. So they actually ended up sleeping together, Elliot and Andy, at the hotel where she took the topless photo. Andy took that photo and later left it in his classroom, the history classroom. That's where Max found it. And Andy was doing it like in a manipulative way, like a threatening way, and teasing him. And she basically taped it somewhere hidden, basically told him to find it. So she was using sex to control him in a way. And Andy kept threatening and blackmailing Elliot to get her own way. But this is when Elliot did find out about the cyberbullying, so he was doing it back just as much. He's trying to downplay it in his confession, but he did it back just as much, especially because she had a strained relationship with her father. So it was just equally as much as threatening because he could get her expelled for child pornography, violence, yada yada yada, get her expelled from school. So it's just like a stalemate between the two of them. And then on the night that she went missing, Andy came to Elliot's house and was like screaming, ranting. She was not in a good mood and she began ripping up some paintings that Kara and Elliot's mum did before she passed away. So Elliot's obviously not loving that. He starts telling her to stop. She doesn't. He pushes her and she falls and smacks her head. It's not a good injury. It's really, really bad injury. Blood starts pooling, that sort of thing. So Elliot goes to get a first aid kit, and when he comes back, Andy isn't there anymore. She's gone. The door's open. It's flapping in the wind. So she's gone. And when Elliot heard that Andy was missing, he started absolutely panicking because obviously he just caused a really, really bad head injury on Andy, and now she's missing. So obviously that's not looking good for him. To protect himself, he keeps saying, "Oh, I can't do this to my children," but it was really just to protect himself. It was very cowardly. He sets up Sal. A very huge trigger warning on this point. So on the day that Sal's body was found, the last day Sal was spotted alive, Elliot actually met Sal where he was last spotted in the parking lot of the school and offered to help him look for Andy to calm his mind. And so they both went to Sal's house to prepare for a search. While at his house, at this point, Elliot had a knife on him. Like, he already pre-planned on killing Sal. So he had a knife on him. He already planned on killing Sal, but whilst he was there, he spotted some sleeping pills in the bathroom. So he takes them and off they go to search in the wood for Andy together. But Sal was already spiked with sleeping pills at this point because Elliot put some sleeping pills in Sal's tea, so he was already a bit woozy. But while out in the woods, Elliot forced Sal to take some more pills. So then when he was unconscious, that was when Elliot wrapped the bag around his head. So it was at this point that Elliot then placed all of the evidence on Sal. Like, he put the blood under the fingernails with tweezers. He didn't just keep a blood bank of Andy. Like, this was the leftover blood from his study when she hit her head. He collected some of that and put it under Sal's nails. See, he had Andy's phone, planted that on him, and then the big twist, well, not twist, it was leading up to it, he tells us that Andy is indeed alive and that he spotted her a couple days later after he killed Sal already, so it was way too late. He spotted her walking along on the way to Kilton, which is where they live. He kidnaps her, essentially, he gaslights her into saying it's for her own good and that she's confused. And he tells Pip that she was actually very disorientated and like high off of her mind, and saying that she's trying to get away from people. And he kept her for 5 years up in the loft of that house where he was tutoring. But when the police arrive, they take him out. Pip mentions about him killing Barney, and he appears very confused and denies killing Barney. But at this point he's gone. Police come up and they go up to see Andy in this loft after 5 years. But when they get there, it's not Andy. No, it's not Andy. Still haven't found her. Despite Elliot, Sal's killer. Oh yeah, he was the one who did the text message, by the way. Like, he took Sal's phone and typed it to his dad. Even though he was now arrested because he confessed to everything, Pip still felt really, really unsettled, and like there was still a missing piece of the puzzle because obviously they haven't found out what happened to Andy. She's quite unsettled, even though Ravi feels quite fulfilled because this is proof that Sal was wrongfully accused and he was set up and he was murdered. It's bonfire night at this point, so November the 5th, well, they celebrated it on the 4th, so November the 4th, Pip decides she wants to look over everything one more time, just because there's something she's missing, some vital point that she can't wrap her head around. When comparing like all the threatening notes, every single bit of evidence, she realizes that there are actually 2 different murderers. Elliot killed Sal, but comparing the threatening notes that Pip got from Elliot compared to the one she got later on, like the first one she got from Elliot all said like things like Pippa, they were still threatening, but they were quite nice compared to the ones she got later on, like with the ones killing Barney, because they started calling her like bitch and insulting her, and it was vastly different. And so she figures out that they're 2 different people entirely. Pip asks one last question, one last interview, and she asks this question to Max. And she asks him if he drugged and, trigger warning, raped Becca. He indirectly confirms that he did, because but she didn't say no, but like she was drugged, so he raped her. So then Pip goes to Becca to basically not accuse her, or not to ask her, but to flat out say, you killed Andy. It was actually her sister all along. Becca agrees with Pip's statements, saying that Becca felt very violated in the hospital because when Becca was. You remember the statement from Becca's best friend saying that she disappeared at the party and needed the morning after pill? So that was actually Max. But the problem was she didn't know who it was because she was so drugged up, and that she felt very violated, depressed when she was at the hospital. When she came out of the hospital, she was really eager, essentially. That's a bit of a bad word, but she really wanted to figure out who it was who drugged and assaulted her. So she ended up finding Andy's drug stash, her burner phone, looked through her phone, and that's when she found out that Andy was selling the roofies and that she sold it to Max. So she finds out that it was Max who assaulted her. Andy comes home when Becca tells Andy what's going on and that she needs help, she's asking Andy for some help. Andy doesn't care. She really doesn't care, and she tells Andy that she should be grateful because at least somebody wanted her, that she should keep her mouth shut because she would get Andy in trouble for selling drugs, because it was her drug that caused Becca to get assaulted. That she should be grateful because she was just the fat and ugly version of her. All of their dad's words playing into each other. So then it starts to get very, very heated. They start shoving each other, but then Andy suddenly falls, collapses, and begins throwing up, and she begins choking on her vomit. And so Becca's quite confused, quite shocked, because obviously they were just shoving each other, but this was obviously from the injury that she had just gotten from Elliot. Becca just froze and watched Andy choke on her vomit and passed away. At this point, Becca confesses that she was actually the one that drove past the security camera at 10:40, and she put Andy's body in the boot of her car and drove her to an old farmhouse that she knew about. She put Andy's body into a septic tank. And she explains that she actually got Pip's number through Stanley the journalist, her on and off boyfriend, because he was mentioning about how this little girl was asking questions about her dead sister. So she got it through there, and she was the one who sent the threatening messages then, telling her that she had to stop because obviously she didn't want her finding out that Becca killed her. She claims that when she took Barney, that she never intended to kill him, but unfortunately, because it was dark, he ended up in the water, in the river, and unfortunately drowned. Although we don't know if that's true. She's off on one. Towards the end of this, Pip starts to feel a bit woozy. This is when Becca says that she still had the stash, Andy's stash of drugs, and drugged Pippa. So Pippa's now drugged, which is a bit weird because if she didn't like being drugged herself, why would she drug someone else, And so she drugged her with Andy's leftover drugs, with the tea that she gave her when she welcomed her in. And then she began to attack Pippa, and the side effects kicked in, and Pippa was all woozy and she had no control of her body really. But luckily at this point, Pip was able to get over to the sink and make herself vomit a couple of times before she manages to escape the house. But the problem is, where their house is, Becca's house is, there's the woods just outside, and so the only place she could go was inside the woods. They both run to the woods, Becca chasing after Pip. Becca jumps on her and starts trying to kill her by strangling her, but then Pip's dad comes flying in and tackles Becca off of Pip, restrains Pip, and that's when Ravi comes running by, explains that he knew something was off when she stayed behind, and that he was able to find her still from the Find My iPhone, like Find My Friend's phone app. So that's where they knew where she was. So she was all like high in the clouds with the drugs, and she had a lot of drugs, and so she quickly told them what Becca told her. While Ravi called the ambulance and the police, she passed up high off her mind. So this is the end of the book now. This is 3 months later. Pip is doing her presentation because it blew up, because it was cold case. She presented her EPQ presentation to basically everyone in the town. There were news outlets everywhere. It was like this whole sensation, and she tells everyone, like even us as the audience, that there were 4 people arrested basically because of her. Like, not really, well, because of their own actions, but she was able to reveal their bad doings. And so that was, Elliot was arrested for killing Sal and the kidnapping of girl who wasn't Andy. So what that was that she was very high off her mind. She, like, Elliot convinced this girl that she was Andy, so this girl believed she was Andy, but she wasn't actually Andy. The second arrest was Becca for killing Andy, attempted murder of Pip, everything else bad she's done. The third arrest was Max, because he ended up having multiple cases of drugging and assaulting ladies. That's what he was arrested for. And our last arrest is Mr. Howie, because obviously he was supplying all of these. Well, he supplied Max, he supplied Andy, and he was dealing to children, so obviously not good. The last good thing out of all of this was that Pip and Ravi ended up together, which was cute, and I love them together. And that is the end of the book. For now, there are 2 more books in these series. Right, this was what was mind-boggling, right? I got the first book, I read the first book, and that was it, right? I never knew there was a second book, let alone a third book, so there's more. If you want me to go through the second and third book like this format, if you liked it, I will do that. As well as the Percy Jackson books, if you're interested in that. But yeah, before I wrap up, I just want to say that this is definitely one of my favourite books. Like, you know, in some books when you're just reading, you couldn't put it down and you're just constantly flipping to the next page and you can't sleep because you have to know what's next. This was this book for me. Like, I read through it so quickly. There was not one moment at all where I was like forcing myself to read through it, or I didn't really want to read through it. Every single part of this was so like gripping, and it was so good. The relationships between the characters were really good, especially between Pip and Ravi, because obviously you had, this was Ravi's brother that they were trying to prove was innocent, and it was a very odd dynamic. He was used to like racism from people, and obviously because of everyone thought his brother was a murderer, it then went on to him, like people were rude to him. There were moments where Pip stuck up for him, but he didn't like that. So there was a lot of good like qualities like that, like building their relationship together. The way that they revealed things, like, it was really good, especially when you reread it. I feel like it's so much more fun like rereading it as I did, because there were bits like nothing was just thrown in there as a shock. Like, it was all slowly built even from the beginning. So like, as I mentioned with the missing food that Kara kept trying to find, that was consistently throughout the book. So it's very, very well thought out. I love this book. It has my heart. But yeah, please let me know if you want to see any more. I hope this has geared you up for the series that is soon to drop. I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited. Even though they changed Barney. He's not a golden retriever anymore. So thank you all so much for watching my video. I really do hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you are new or want to see any more content. I will see you all in the next video. Bye!